Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Freight Forecasting with Michael Vincent. Got my good friend Zach, the Sultan of Sonar, Strickland, with me again this week.
Hello, hello.
How you doing, Zach?
Good, good.
You having a great week?
So far, so great.
Up until today, right?
Yeah, until this very moment.
Yeah, it's looking good in about 30 minutes. A little less. Things should be picking up. There's your forecast for today.
Yeah.
Can you believe it's my 100th show today?
You're what?
No, it's not. It's like 6 or something like that. I get it confused. I'm not really good at math. That's why I use tools. So freight forecasting, right? So building charts using visualization, talking about data points, being able to forecast the market, look what's going on, monitoring, benchmarking against the different modes, your competitive cohorts, so on and so forth, right? So Zach graciously came on today. We're talking about a whole bunch of stuff that is affecting international freight.
Well, what better to talk about when you're talking about trying to get ahead of what's happening on domestically than the international?
Right, because it comes and then it hits domestic and moves, right?
Right.
Or does it just appear where it's supposed to?
We haven't perfected the transport technology yet.
I hear blimps are in the future. Yeah, floating gas that's highly volatile is a great idea.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe not so much. So what's today? Thursday. So Tuesday I put out a dashboard that showed a lot of imports from port to port, lanes, so on and so forth, effects on Los Angeles a little bit, but it was really just looking at the different trade lanes and so on and volumes and trends going on, and it blew up on LinkedIn.
Right.
And people wanted to link to it and so on and so forth. So I figured we'd just go through that, how that was built. So the non-Sonar users who weren't able to just click that link and have it populate in their My Pages in Sonar, talk about what these things mean and that type of stuff. But even the people for the people who did get it, you can go build this yourself and give you some ideas to build other dashboards yourself, right? If
exactly.
You're in Sonar. So that's kind of the idea. And I don't know if we want to throw this up on the screen so they can see the one that we're talking about, but it goes through daily imports by lane.
There we go.
It goes by imports or exports by origin, so you can look at all the different ports around the world and not just look at them from Port of Antwerp to BWI or Elizabeth or something like that, but everything out of Antwerp or everything out of a certain port into the U.S. as a total, so you can see what the volume is right there. And then you can dig into specific ports inbound, what they're receiving by lane or just in general.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So that's what this does. So I don't know if you want to add something there. I'm going to pull up while you're talking.
I was going to say, if you let me talk.
I worked out today, Zach. You have met me before.
Yeah.
I'm a little amped.
Yeah, a few years. Just let him go.
Yeah, just stand back.
No, I think, just what you were talking about, obviously, when you're trying to get ahead of the game, looking at specific things that are, of course, leading and have an influence into what you are doing. If you can see all the stuff that's happening before you see it and your specific process and that whole thing, we're talking about, obviously, the supply chain of the world in general. Shippers do source a lot of their goods overseas, which, of course, is why most people are they're concerned about coronavirus, because what does that mean when I go to Target and the shelves are empty?
Right. Yeah.
They think that's going to happen.
That's right.
And really, what what you're trying to get ahead of is what's happening before those shelves get empty. What's happening? Is there a signal that those shelves are even going to get empty?
Exactly. And then even you keep going down, and you're probably going down the route is, okay, let's say they don't get empty, but those coffers that are supplying them are empty.
Exactly. And that's the stuff that, people in the industry are concerned about is, you and I can go to Target and we'll see that there's still stuff, there's still Legos there our kids like, et cetera. And we'll see that, but we don't know what's going on in the back of the store. We don't know what's going on in the DC.
Nor do we want to know.
Yeah, no. And that's really what the maritime stuff's all about. You're really trying to see what is the national inventory. I mean, a lot of this stuff is retail driven, but there's all sorts of other stuff in terms of, how they, raw materials, raw goods moving throughout the global supply chain that gives you signals of, upcoming events.
Right.
And, the dashboard you built here has, a really good I guess, approach in terms of looking from the highest level and then breaking it down slowly into the more incremental lanes.
Yeah, and I followed up the next day with then the domestic side.
Right.
So you could kind of see it the next thing. And we're not going to get into that today. We might get into something a little bit deeper, or just tease it a little bit. And after we prepping the show, we were looking at some different things that make sense, but the reason behind them were not incredibly clear. And after you left, I figured it out.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually.
All right.
I understand what was going on.
All right. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah,
You've given me a teaser.
yeah. Right. So let's build this dashboard, right?
Yeah,
So let's put it back up on the screen here. And what I've done is I've gone down here into, let's cancel, but I've gone into add a page, and you got to name it. So I'm going to I'm going to name it freight forecasting, or FFing. And save. I have to hit it twice on this computer for some reason for it to save, and it gives us the our blank canvas, so to speak. And the first thing I think you wanted me going in a little bit different order. So, first thing we're going to do is build a tree map, and these are pretty cool.
Yeah,
and let me build this, and you can.
I'll chat while you build, because I know I can't build those things and talk at the same time because my brain it can't handle it. I only have a limited amount of capacity.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to build the tree map, and the tree map is one of my personal favorite visual tools to look at, because it's an organization basically giving you, it's giving you how big is, your specific market in relation to the rest of the other markets. So, and it represents it very well on the visual scale. So, once you build this, the tree map out, you'll see we're going to have a lot of reds and greens, mostly reds because we're talking about maritime shipments, and a lot of those are going down.
There are some greens there.
Yeah, there are a few greens. Again, that's the part that's really interesting about this, because you can see it quickly, and that's the whole point. You want to see these things quickly, and you want to be able to...
Whoa.
Oh, there they are. And you want to be able to see them,
So tell me what's going on down here in this bottom corner here, Zach. This is really... Ooh, I breached microphone etiquette there for a second.
Yep.
Sorry, dooner. I have to say dooner every time I do that.
Uh-oh. So yeah, if you look at your tree map, the top left is the biggest absolute market. So,
and I'm gonna show the people how to filter this while you're doing that. So you got this filter button here, and then I can change the values to kind of clean up this stuff that you can't read down here anyways. Go ahead.
All those little tiny boxes.
Yeah.
So the Port of Vientiane up there in, it's the biggest one, and it's going to have the biggest absolute value underneath it. All those small numbers underneath the percentages are the number of shipments that we're talking about here. So there's 2149 shipments coming out of there. Is that a weekly? Yeah. Is it a weekly that you built?
This is daily.
Daily. Okay. Yeah. I was like, that seems low.
Because yesterday it was plus 12.
Okay. So things have... Wow.
And we've seen that in the other chart where you saw this uptick, and we were thinking, well, is this the rebound? And then no.
There is a little bit of a bouncing stair step going down.
We talked about that dead cat bouncing the whole way down the staircase.
And yes, and the fun thing about this is that you can do it for last value, you can do it weekly, you can do it yearly, etc. But we're looking at versus last value. So roughly, I guess you've got the weekly exports.
Yeah, and I can quickly change that. I can just click on here. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you can change it into, yesterday or daily, et cetera. But the biggest one up there, Port of Vientiane, down 21.4% versus this time last week. So it is dropping down, and now you've got it pulled 21.2%. Yeah. And then, all these other ones. But again, this is going to be your biggest outbound port.
Right.
And you're looking at, the Port of Singapore. I can't even pronounce the one with -13.
Shanghai?
Yeah. No, not Shanghai, but anyway, if you notice, most of them are Asian.
We need Henry Byers in here.
Yeah, he knows all of these port names like real quick. But yeah, most of them are Asian, and I think that's kind of also very telling in itself. The fact that most of the biggest ones are coming from these Asian ports.
That are dropping.
Right.
And the larger ones would obviously being into the U.S., being the largest importer into the U.S., they're China ports. Yeah. Or in and right around that area.
Exactly. Right. They're all going to be, Port of Shanghai is the biggest in the world, I believe. Yes. Not, and then, of course, we have a lot of Shenzhen and other stuff coming in. But Hong Kong, again, pretty big.
But now Singapore has that not been rising for a while? I mean,
Yes.
isn't that's a beneficiary of the trade wars, right?
Yes. So, Malaysia and Vietnam and all of those ports have been on the rise over the last year or so.
Right.
That is interesting because that is not exactly the same thing.
No, it is not.
Catch.
It is not the exact same thing, and it has a profoundly different effect domestically because Singapore, if I'm not incorrect, it most comes through Suez to the east coast. Once you get to
you get a little bit more of a preference to the east coast once you get down there.
Yeah.
It's
on that line.
It's still, I think it's still like shorter to go straight to Los Angeles, but since you do, you're basically a few days faster to the east coast.
Yeah.
So if you were going to ship it to Los Angeles and then ship it all the way across the country to New York, now it makes a little bit more sense to.
Yeah, because you're going to hit Los Angeles, and then you got to go through the rail yards. If it's in an intermodal box, that's not going to be transloaded or warehoused, and so on and so forth. Right? Yeah, gotcha. Because then you're going to pay the expense to go across the United States to get to the major populace.
Right.
Yeah.
So and it actually is a little bit more expensive coming out of that port going to Los Angeles because you are adding days going to Los Angeles.
Right. I'm going to put up a market table here while you're doing that. So I'm coming down here, and if you missed that, the plus sign over here brings up all the widgets you can do. I'm going to select a market table. Go ahead, Zach, while I put this together.
Yeah.
This market table is going to be inbound maritime by U.S. port.
Inbound maritime by U.S. port. Awesome.
Yeah, daily, weekly, and monthly.
Yeah, so we're looking at the outbound side of things.
Yeah,
it's going to the U.S., but it's coming from these ports over there. Now, the reason that you want to look at the outbound ports, specifically, is if maybe you're not super familiar with the market itself, you're not super familiar with the maritime, how big the port is. It's pretty interesting to see. But also, a lot of the sourcing, just like we saw with Singapore there, the sourcing changes has an impact to domestic freight movement, domestic freight patterns. So
it sure does.
The fact that Singapore is growing, that means that you need to watch out on the East Coast a little bit more because people have started changing their sourcing. I mean, the Targets and the Home Depots may be finding other places to manufacture, and a lot of this is already happening because of the trade war.
Right. Right. Yeah, and so this could be exacerbating that. Well, It should be if you're smart.
Yeah. Right.
If you want product on shelf.
Yeah.
Right?
It's only validating their decision.
Yeah.
If anything. So looking at the outbound stuff is very important, especially if you are interested in, figuring out how shipping patterns move, ebb and flow internationally across the country. Now, you've built a market table here,
right?
And the market table is a good tool to use. If the heat map, the tree map there is good to see just kind of a general overview,
right?
If you're not super familiar with how big everything is, in the marketplace and whatever you're looking at, it's a good way of looking at like market share. Things of that nature, just to see who the big players are, who the small ones are, who's significant, who's not really in the mix yet. And now the market table that you're building there.
So it's emerging origins or emerging markets. For imports.
Emerging or.
And if you had
demerging.
Or demerging, anti-emerging.
Anti-emerging.
So if you had the detail behind this, which we do.
Yep.
But it's not in here. You could see where specific commodities are changing their origin.
Right. And a lot of people know.
Right.
A lot of people know what areas are what commodities. I mean, there's not.
Sure they do. Yeah.
You really don't have to do that much work to figure out.
Not a lot of automobile coming out of New Zealand.
No. And like I said, a lot of it's retail stuff. So it's. You don't have to do that much work. Think about, the kind of labor that is involved here. A lot of the plastic stuff that we have comes out of there, and we send actually the raw materials over there for them to turn it into the plastic stuff because the labor costs, of course, are cheap.
Gotcha.
Now the market table, market table you're pulling up, this is pretty useful, especially if you're trying to get a little bit more focused. If you have, you're more interested in the West Coast of the United States, or you're more interested in Los Angeles, you really want to see Savannah, et cetera. So the market table allows you to target specific areas that you're interested in a little bit more. You've got the whole thing.
And that's a great point. I picked every one of them.
You picked everything.
You could just pick specific ports. Yeah.
But it allows you to see multiple variables. multiple stats on those individual markets.
Yeah, because you could even, I mean, I just picked the imports on a you got daily here on the left-hand side, monthly in the middle, and then weekly here.
And this is good. This is a really good way to look at it because you're looking at near-term trend, middle-term trend, and long-term trend.
Right.
That way you can see, you don't have to look at the chart. You can just see, seasonality is a thing. So year over year gives you an accurate view of like, okay, seasonally speaking, we're down, X percent out of, going into, what is that?
Where are you at?
UST, or I see Savannah. They're up.
This is Savannah.
Yep.
Tacoma.
There we go. All right. So Tacoma's down seasonally year over year, which is, again, the West Coast has been losing volume year over year. So this is good. But they're up in terms of daily. Yeah. So they had a little bit of a correction, but midterm, they're down. They're still in the...
This is just a blip in my mind.
Yeah.
It's just
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
The ship hit.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, Tacoma is still on a downward trend overall, but Savannah itself, again, East Coast, maybe that Chinese New Year effect has not hit the East Coast just yet, which it should be scheduled to hit about now.
Yeah, it should be hitting right about now, right? Yep. So, because we're still a week away from the uptick last year. If you went back last year, we're still a little bit like a week away from the up. So you would think that we're probably 2-3 weeks out. Yeah, we're right in line with where we should be. What's today? I think it's 4. 4
so Chinese New Year was January 25th. There's traditionally a big lull about 3 to 4 weeks after that to the West Coast ports. Then another, add another 2 weeks to that, and it hits the East Coast ports, et cetera. So
now, further to this, just really, really quickly to this, because I was going to get this in, but you talk so much. Is on these market tables, you can add other indices. So I just put in the imports. Daily, monthly, weekly. Right. But then we also have the daily wait times by port. Right. And by rail heads, et cetera. And then the truck volumes that are coming out of there, and the rail volumes, and the intermodal boxes, and the domestic boxes. You could line this thing up and really see how is this affecting this port. Are wait times up, and you're seeing this influx? Are they down? How badly is it hitting it? So if you're a drayage company, if you're hauling out of there, you've got a good sense of what the train wreck is happening, if the volume is coming through, I suppose, right? Yep. So yeah, you're monitoring your specific areas of interest, and then of course you can add multiple stats, and you can get a pretty solid picture of port activity all in one little box there. Yeah. So I'm going to hit a heat map here. Heat map list is what we're gonna build here. The heat map list. Now this is just going to be your standard watch list with some colors. Well, I think it's a little bit better than just standard. Yeah, it is. I mean, it just gives you a much better visual. Yeah, it gives you, if you're trying to sort things, if you've, anybody that's been in an Excel spreadsheet, eventually you put that little filter button up there and say, well, I just want to know who the top 5 are. You get a list and you say, I want to know who the biggest ones are. Also, how does that relate to what they were doing in the previous period or the previous time that you've selected or whatever. So that's the value of the heat list here, is you want to see in a specific order, top to bottom, bottom to top, whichever way you want to do it, and you want to see how they are performing. So correct. Yes. You want me to do? I'll do this on a weekly. Yeah, that's fine. I like weekly because daily sometimes for certain stats becomes a little bit. It's dirty. You have a lot of data. It is. I still can't get away. Even when I use and I want to see weekly, I throw the daily up there because it just makes me feel better. I don't know why. I like looking at daily on a chart because I can almost intuitively understand what that means. You know, I can see these ebbs and flows. If you're looking at daily, you're going to get an earlier indication of trend changes. Right. But it may be more, it's just more complex. You're going to be exposed to more volatility. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the weekly is, traditionally how most people like to look at numbers. I myself still like the weekly, but that's even almost too granular at times, especially when you're talking about seasonality. Yeah. You and I had obviously had a lot of experience with this back in the day. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, revenue's down 5% this week versus last year. You can't. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of differences. There's a lot of things that change year over year in weeks. So you really try to compare months, and even that, you can argue that at times can have some, unusual, movement in it. So just as we're speaking to, maritime stuff and Chinese New Year and all this kind of stuff. So the weekly number is going to be
probably the easiest to look at in terms of what's happening week over week, because you're not going to get a lot of that. Like we were looking at Tagoma there, that little bounce, that little single day bounce
this
that we're getting.
134% in one day.
Yeah, this little single day bounce. You're going to smooth that out in a weekly number. So
and to that point, you could just click on this and throw up this chart.
Yep.
And see that.
Yeah, the long-running trend is down.
is not 134% up, right? So.
Right. But year over year, you're down. Now, again, you can still get into trouble with the year-over-year number because Chinese New Year was a full 2 weeks earlier.
That's correct.
Than it was last year.
Yeah,
so
this week's coinciding or hitting each other is definitely an anomaly.
But overall, the trend is pretty telling.
Yeah.
You throw up last year versus this year, you can see that the bottom of last year was about 20% higher than the bottom of this year.
No doubt, no doubt. So I threw up this heat map list which, and just let me go over this real quick, and we can talk about this for a moment because we do want to get to some other stuff as well. But so the heat map list, what I pulled up is weekly port to port, right? So this is everything out of where am I at here?
Near
Port of Yanshan,
right here,
right?
Yeah.
To Port of Seattle, then to Port of Savannah, then to Oakland, and so on and so on and so forth. And you can change this by name, by value, so it's absolute value, the change per, amount, and then the change percent to see what is going on here, right?
There you go.
So we can look at these things. So you can look at these and see who's up 46,000%.
That's a lot.
That's big.
Yeah. That's a big move.
Big. Yeah, if you're in Norfolk.
Watch out. Well, actually, Norfolk's one of the biggest ports in the United States.
Yeah, but it's out of one port.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not that the port went up 46,000. It's from one port.
Right.
You have to look over here in this to see the actual overall port.
Right.
Right. So this is lane specific here.
And also, since it is one port and you're looking at lane-specific information, you're going to be able to see pretty clearly, like, are we seeing volumes all over the place go down? Or is there a specific lane that had some sort of activity?
Correct. I mean, and that's it. When you're looking at, like, Tacoma, you could drill down using this and using a heat map list and figure out what caused that blip.
Yep. And you can say, well, which port was the one contributing?
Yeah. Which one did it?
And then you could almost isolate.
And like you said,
there.
you can from there go, it was probably this commodity.
Yep.
Or you could tap into our deeper data and we could tell you exactly what it was.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me.
It really is.
I mean, if you're in trucking or brokerage, or I don't care what you're in, like the use case for that is pretty tremendous in terms of
it really is
sales leads, forecasting, benchmarking. The market itself has been, what many consider flat year over year.
Yeah,
but it's not remotely the same. Like you've still got a circle, and it's the same size circle. But it's sliced a lot differently this year than it was last year.
A lot differently. Yeah. We have a few minutes left.
Oh, just a few.
So I wanted to do this.
Which one did we say we were going to do next?
If we had time?
Yeah. Was it the gauges?
And we were going to do gauges at the end, yeah.
Okay.
You want to do gauges?
Yeah, let's do the gauges. I kind of like those for this specific purpose.
And if we go over, Cody will yell at us and we'll be okay.
He's okay.
The thumbs up from Cody. Thank you, Cody.
All right, Cody.
Go give me a cheeseburger.
Supportive words.
All right, so gauge chart. I'll do this.
Yep.
That's not Georgia. That's short for gauge.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the gauge chart. So what you're about to pull up, just to talk about it, get everybody prepped for what they're about to see. The gauge chart is going to be something that's...
Weekly imports by lane is what I was going to do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It really doesn't matter what you pull up, because the point of the gauge chart is, to see clearly where does this stand. Say you don't have a point of reference. You don't know how much volume the port of Yanshan ships every year.
Correct.
And you want to see in the last 52 weeks, how does this stand up to what we've seen, in the last year or so. So what the gauge will do is it's going to have a midpoint, and it's going to have a little indicator, and it's going to fill in the line, and you're going to see clearly where is this a high amount of volume or a low amount of volume compared to the last year. And so if you're not super familiar with their volume numbers or anything like that, you're going to see where they are sitting, basically where they're sitting seasonally in the year.
Right.
And that little gauge.
I'm just adjusting this so it looks similar to the thing I did the other day.
Okay. That's good. So see over there on the left there, you've got weekly maritime import shipments, 1966.
Let me change this to a scrolling.
There it went away.
Hold that thought.
Yeah. But
there we go.
There it is.
Tell me when to stop. Who are you looking at?
There they come in. So it doesn't matter. We can just keep it this way. So that 21,638 you see scrolling by, they're about a midpoint. So they're about on average. So they're in the midpoint of their cycle.
Right.
Over the last, 52 weeks or so.
Yeah, so that's a 52-week high and low.
52-week high and low. And they're right in the midline. They're
Seattle
at the median.
is sucking wind here.
Yep, they're in the median. And then all these other people are down there in the bottom end. But then what is that 306? They're looking...
Port of Manatee.
I mean, over there in Florida. Tampa? Is that where that is? Is Tampa over there? Is that close by?
Well, it is in Florida.
Yeah, I know that. Okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But these are, especially if you're somebody that deals in and around these ports, drayage operators are the obvious use case. But at the same time, you have a lot of people that are involved in shipping and transportation around Florida, which I don't know if you've heard this.
I was in that business for quite a number of years.
You were in Florida?
Yeah, Miami.
Oh.
I ran container freight stations. We had liner service all through the Caribbean and NVOCC and that type of stuff.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, no, there's people involved all up and down the Miami River.
So yes, you were in.
I was there. Yeah.
Yes, you shipped all over the Caribbean.
I was doing my thing.
So yes, so if you do have an interest in that type of freight, that area specifically, there's specific commodities that come through those ports that you can track and monitor, et cetera.
In fact, theirs was our main port.
Yeah. So
NVO out of Miami. This was our liner port right here, West Palm Beach.
Oh, all right. There you go. Yeah. So now you can see clearly what's coming in. What's been coming in? Are they trending up? Are they trending down? Are they at the bottom of the cycle? Are you getting less freight? Are you getting more freight?
Yeah.
And that's going to help you. Again, a lot of the trucking companies, they don't see this freight for weeks after this comes in.
That's true.
So
or longer.
Or longer, potentially.
I mean, it depends on what happens, especially when we're talking about the effects of, what's going on in China, et cetera, in the world. A lot of that was half transloaded, if you will.
Right.
It went into warehouses.
Right.
So the first portion was completed. The second portion is yet to, come sometime down the road.
But
right. There's that which hits and then immediately hits the rail or is transloaded right into truckload over the road. And there's that just goes and fills
warehouses.
Yeah, like the pull forward we experienced.
Yeah, and that's what we had last year. A big amount of pull forward. Now, Los Angeles and Ontario grew tremendously last year in terms of overall outbound freight volume.
Yeah,
and a lot of that was simply just movement between warehouses. But we could see that happening in the customs data.
Yeah.
We saw all this huge just increase. So the seasonality of the customs, the imports started just popping in September, August of 2018.
Right.
And it just held strong throughout the last half of the year when traditionally it just shuts down. Like November, December, import volumes traditionally, if you ask Henry buyers, you've got August, September, and then a little bit of October, and then all of a sudden it just goes away. Intermodal, pops, et cetera. Right. You can see the rail volumes almost immediately impacted by all these. No
doubt.
And then all of a sudden, Los Angeles wakes up in January and just 20 to 30% higher outbound volumes.
Yeah.
And it stayed that way until about November of this year, which is exactly what you're pulling up.
Well, yeah. So, this was an interesting, and I'm not going to build this. Maybe we'll do it next week, or
maybe,
possibly. I don't know. I'm going to throw it out on LinkedIn and talk about it a little bit. It's quite interesting.
Yeah,
this is the one where I found the missing puzzle piece at the end after you had left. You had to go to a meeting or whatever it was. But so some of the things that are on here is you can put in these nice trend lines, et cetera, and see year over year what the difference is and try and figure out what's going on. Right.
Right. And a lot of the times it doesn't matter what why. It just matters that it did.
Yeah. Well, there's your first is we better react to what's about to happen and then figure out why it's about to happen. Right. Yeah. You've got to why it did. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's definitely a lot of people out there that all of a sudden they got adjusted. They adapted to this volume of freight coming out of Southern California, and then all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah.
So
no doubt about it.
You've been building your network around this, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait.
Yeah. So what this is really quick, and then we'll end the show. Mm-hmm. On the left-hand side, we're looking at U.S. Customs Maritime into Los Angeles. Orange line is last year. Blue line is this year. Right? Yep. 59% down.
That's pretty rough.
So, and yes, it is Chinese New Year's, but it's 60% lower than last year's. There should be some huge effect, right? I mean, that's a significant percentage. Outbound tender volumes, though, are only down 14%.
Right.
Truckload.
Right.
And rising.
Going up? Yeah,
they're going up.
Everybody's thinking, no, Corona.
Yeah, but no,
they haven't run out of inventory yet.
That's exactly right. And we're looking at this. It's not reefer. Reefer's dying. Refrigerated capacity, that is dying.
Oh, that's the reject index.
Yeah, reject index. The van is pulling this north. It's dry van goods that are pulling this,
which is a little counterintuitive.
It is a little counterintuitive. You're right.
And this time of year, at least.
Yeah, and
we are a little early.
And you can see that this year is actually the outbound tender rejects total, which is being pulled by dry van, is 90.45% higher than last year at the same time.
That's a lot.
It's interesting.
So it's a very different year.
It's a very different year. And we'll get into that a little bit. I got another chart here that we can talk about maybe next week or whenever that'll really drive it home as to what is going on and what you need to prepare for. So anyways, Zach.
Yep.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Yes, sir.
And now you can get on with your good day since you got this half hour or 36, almost 37 minutes of not so good day. But 4 o'clock's Thursday. Mike Vincent, Freight Forecasting on FreightWaves TV. See you next week. Peace and love.
See ya.